Welcome to The Greatest Footage Ever Found, an investigative documentary series exploring the mysterious disappearance of movie podcasters David Scandura and Justus Burkitt. I'm your host, Charlie Anwar. In my search for answers to the increasingly bizarre events surrounding the disappearance of David and Justus, I spoke with past guest of The Greatest Movie Ever Made, Valerie Moffat, who appeared on the show to discuss David Lynch's film Twin Peaks: Fire or Walk With Me.
They're missing? Oh, wow. I didn't know that. You're telling me that for the first time. Damn. I thought I hadn't heard from them just because they suck at responding to DMs. Like, I'm in a group chat with Justus, and he posts in there once every, 8 months? The Podmaster isn't missing too, is she? Do Jill and Sonora need a new home? If so, I'm available. Oh, the Podmaster's fine? Well, good. Okay. So I won't be adopting Jill then. All right. Fine. I mean, good. That's good. No. That's great. I'm so happy to hear that. Oh, I'm just so happy to hear that.
While it did occur to me that Valerie might somehow be involved in the disappearance of David and Justus in some kind of scheme to steal Justus's dog, it seemed unlikely. She also had an airtight alibi. On the date of the disappearance, she was recording a much better and more successful podcast for the Maximum Fun podcast network in Los Angeles. It seemed like I had hit another dead end, and needed to return to the lost episodes.
I'm David Scandura.
I'm Justus Burkitt.
And today we're here to find out, is Be My Cat a Film for Anne, the greatest movie ever made?
People are dying. Okay.
Welcome to the greatest movie ever made, the show where we watch a movie and tell you if it's the greatest movie ever made.
Okay.
People are dying. Okay.
Okay.
A movie that is so thoroughly...
Oh my god! Oh my god!
You know what one got me today?
Yeah, which one?
Or got me this time when I watched it last night? I have it written down here. You don't have the courage to call the police right now. Oh fuck!
Oh, fuck! Apologies for our probably bad Romanian accents, but yeah. Oh fuck! is great. I also really like when Flory wants to sleep with him, and he's like, my fucking actress thinks I'm a nice guy. It's so good. So many great line deliveries from Adrian Tofei in this movie. Sorry, you can finish doing it.
The movie's so thoroughly entertaining and blah, blah, blah. You know, I'm David Scandura, joined as always by my co-host, Justus Burkitt. Justus, Anne Hathaway.
Yeah.
What's your opinion?
You know what? I like her, but not as much as Adrian in this movie does.
I don't think anyone does.
I like her. I think Anne Hathaway is a very talented actress. I've enjoyed her in a lot of films. I don't really think I've ever seen Anne Hathaway in a movie and been like, oh, she was bad in that. Even her performance in The Dark Knight Rises, which is the one that Adrian's such a big fan of. Even that performance, which I don't particularly love that movie. I liked it a lot when I saw it in the theater, and then it's kind of had diminishing returns for me the times I've seen it since then, right? Even in that, I don't think she's bad. I think she's fine in it. So yeah, I'm pro Anne Hathaway, I guess. I think she's pretty good.
Cool.
Yeah. What about you?
Much like Adrian, a big fan of her in Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah.
I think she's one of the better parts of that movie.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
And it was one of those where I was like, oh, I didn't know Anne Hathaway was capable of that. Not that it's like a god tier career defining performance, but as someone who knew her from The Princess Diaries,
Devil Wears Prada,
seeing her as as a superhero,
right?
I thought she did a really good job with the role, and I haven't seen her in much else.
Yeah. Yeah, she goes a little like edgy and actiony in Dark Knight Rises, which is kind of a different mode for her, for sure.
Yeah.
Because you're used to seeing her as kind of like the like awkward, like, oh, I'm like a hot girl, but I'm like kind of quirky and like a little bit of a loser, was like sort of her lane in a lot of her like comedy stuff, her like rom-com stuff. So yeah, anyway.
Yeah.
I like Anne Hathaway, but you know what I like better than Anne Hathaway? No disrespect to Anne Hathaway. This film. I love this movie so much.
We'll get into it.
Yeah.
Before we get there, how are you doing? And anything that you'd like to recommend this week?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I'm having a good day. I had a good weekend. The show opened, and I was very happy with it. And now, because it's open, I, as the director, kind of am done with that. So it's nice because I'm like less busy. I did go back to my day job today because I had taken some leave from there to direct the show, and now I'm back and had a good first day back. Like I on mic have been pretty I've often been kind of a downer about like day job stuff on mic, where it's like not my favorite thing to do. I don't think it's anybody's favorite thing to do except those lucky few people who are like working in something that they're passionate about. But it was fine. Like, it wasn't overwhelming. Everybody was really chill when I came back today, and just kind of like getting caught up or whatever. So yeah, I'm doing good. I'm feeling good. And then for media recommendations, you and I talked about this off mic, but I've really been enjoying the black metal band Psy from Japan, and that is SIGH, Psy as in
Yes. The legendary Japanese black metal band.
Yes, legendary Japanese black metal band. Any of our listeners who are fans of metal probably have already heard of Psy. But there's a difference between hearing of them and going through their discography, which is what I've been doing. And I would highly recommend doing that because so far I don't dislike any of their albums. And their most recent album, which came out in 2022, called Shiki, is a fucking wall-to-wall masterpiece, like 9.5 out of 10 album for me. I had never listened to it front to back. I had listened to a few songs off of Shiki before, and then just like within this past week, I was like, I should really like go through Psy's discography because I'm a fan of like a lot of songs, but I hadn't like sat down and listened to an album. I started with Shiki. It is still my favorite album of theirs, of the ones that I've listened to, and it fucking rocks. It is so good. And it's about like the inevitability of death and stuff. So like the subject matter there is like also shit I severely fuck with in art. And it's just really good. It's really like brutal and heavy, but also like experimental. There's a lot of like saxophone solos on that album, which rocks.
Yeah, they have a lot of saxophone that they like to throw in.
Yeah, Psy is also like well known for their like heavy use of synthesizers, which is like really fun. There's like a couple of like songs in their discography that almost like go into like borderline like electronic dance directions because of the heavy synth usage. It's really fun, wild stuff, and not just like run-of-the-mill black metal one-man project guy screaming unintelligibly. It's like more like artistic than that, and I like it. Not to say that one man screaming unintelligibly does not have its own artistic merits within the black metal genre, because sometimes it does, but this is a little bit more of like an experimental spin on it.
Yeah.
And it's fun, and I like it.
Yeah, well, I think they started in Japan in like the 90s. Like, they were one of the first black metal bands in Japan.
Yeah.
So their career has taken a lot of different twists and turns over the years, from like the more traditional black metal sound to experimental stuff.
Yeah.
I jump into their catalog every couple of years and just check them out. And I still haven't quite like fully gotten into them, so I need to do that for sure.
Yeah. Anyway, how are you doing? And do you have any media do you have any media to recommend?
I'm doing good. Had a good opening weekend of the show. I think it went really well, and had a great time hanging out with the cast. After opening night, I'm still just really tired.
Yeah.
Like I haven't readjusted to not being at rehearsal every night.
Yeah.
So like I meant to go to the gym this morning because I haven't been to the gym in over a month during this whole process. And I just slept till like 9:30, and I was like, well, If I go to the gym, then that means I will be starting at work at like 10:30 or 11, and that's just fucking stupid.
Yeah.
So I should just start work.
Yeah. I've also been incredibly inconsistent with the gym throughout the whole show thing, so I get it and I sympathize. I also intended to go this morning and didn't.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And otherwise, everything's going really well. The media that I have to recommend is In the Dream. I am naked and lost in a black void. In the distance, I see a faint light. It slowly drifts closer to me, growing brighter and enveloping me in a blinding white haze. A low rumbling sound fills my ears, and two figures emerge from the light. It's them. They finally found me. George, Lucas, and Watto. I begin to involuntarily tremble with fear as Watto's piercing eyes look at me. He speaks to me, but I don't see his mouth move.
What the fuck is going on?
I hear him in my mind. I am betting everything on Sebulba, he says. George Lucas just stares at me, unblinking, emotionless, as if he is studying me. Then his mouth begins to open, his jaw unhinging like a snake, stretching further and further until the muscles in his cheeks begin to tear, and a great howling noise emerges from his throat. He is stepping closer to me. The wailing grows louder. More mouths open on his body. The howling begins to turn to laughter. Watto begins to speak again in some ancient language I cannot understand. But somehow I know what he is saying. It's the date and time that I will die. I am going to die. I am going to die. I cannot wake up. So yeah, that's what I've been enjoying lately. Sorry. Why are you laughing?
Was that George Lucas and Watto creepypasta?
What do you mean?
Wait. You didn't just read a whole George Lucas and Watto creepypasta? There wasn't like a whole several paragraphs of you like did it in a whole dramatic voice?
No, I recommended Chapel Roan.
Oh, okay. You know, weird shit has been happening in the pod studio lately.
Did something happen to me?
Now that you mention it, your eyes did turn a little bit red, and your head did spin around 360 degrees at one point while you were doing that whole thing.
Oh,
I thought that maybe that was just like a bit that you were trying out. But in retrospect, it might have had something to do with all the weird demonic noises that we've been hearing for the last couple of weeks.
Shit.
Yeah.
I could have sworn I was telling you to listen to Chapel Roan.
Yeah, Kelsey Hans also recommended Chapel Roan. I've been listening. Chapel Roan is great, and our listeners should listen to Chapel Roan as well.
But I was possessed?
Yeah, I think you might have been. And you know, now that I'm thinking back on the moment more, your chair also did levitate up off the floor, and all the lights in here started flickering. So, you know, that maybe could have tipped me off as well. But again, I just kind of thought, like, I was like, oh, David is really, really into this Watto and George Lucas fanfic. I just thought you were just really, really jazzed about what you were telling me. So in the moment, I didn't clock it as a demonic intervention necessarily. Yeah.
Jesus Christ,
yeah,
man.
Yeah. It's real weird shit going on here. Not sure what's up. Something in the air. I don't know. Is Mercury in retrograde or something? Fucking, I don't know. Anyway.
I'm sure it's nothing.
Yeah, I'm sure it's nothing too. I'm really not worried about it. Like, you went back to normal. You seem fine now.
Yeah, I'm chilling. I feel okay.
Does your neck feel all right after doing that 360-degree spin?
I mean, my neck normally has a little bit of pain to it.
Yeah.
But it feels normal.
Okay.
My balls itch a little bit, but otherwise I feel okay.
Well, everybody knows that a demon enters you through your urethra and lives in your nutsack when it's not actively possessing you. So
that's just common knowledge.
That's probably what that is.
All right, so we're talking about Adrian Tofei's Romanian found footage horror movie for little freaks. Yes. Be My Cat, a film for Anne.
Be My Cat. A film for Anne.
How the fuck did you find this?
The explanation is real simple and real short, David. Like I mentioned on our As Above, So Below episode, I had a phase where I was getting really into found footage, and there's a lot of it on Tubi, and I was just watching random shit that looked interesting to me on Tubi, and I had seen, I think on like the found footage horror Reddit, someone recommending Be My Cat, a Film for Anne, and I was scrolling Tubi one night, saw that it was only an hour and 32 minutes, and I was like, fuck it. So that's how I found this movie. I just like saw a Reddit post about it, and then just while I was browsing Tubi, I was like, oh, that's that movie that I saw someone recommend. And I sat down and watched it, and
oh boy.
Yeah. Whoo boy. This movie is I said before, this is like our first certified Justus Burkitt evil film on the podcast. I know past guest Val Moffat did say that in her opinion, Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me is a Justus Burkitt evil film. But for me, like certified Justus Burkitt evil film is one that I consider an evil film, and I can't get behind Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me being an evil film because it contains Dale Cooper, the single most pure and good character in all of fiction, right? It's like he keeps that movie from being purely evil just by being in it. Because he always feels like warm and comforting to me. Evil films contain nothing warm and comforting. They contain only bad shit and sad shit and icky shit wall to wall, and after it ends you're like, I feel worse about the human condition and the state of life on this planet and in the universe in general than I did before I started watching this movie, and that is how I felt the first time I watched Be My Cat, a Film for Anne. And that is not to say that there is nothing in this movie that is entertaining and even quite funny.
Yeah.
It's funny, but it's never funny in a way that is happy. It is exclusively funny in a way that is like awkward, cringy, anxiety-inducing, and just weird freak shit, right? David, snap out of it. David, I think you got possessed again. You started barking like a dog? Or was that just you? Your eyes did turn red and you levitated again, by the way.
Oh my God.
It's making you bark like a dog.
What the fuck?
I don't know what's happening in here. Anyway, hopefully that doesn't happen again.
Jesus Christ. What?
Do you feel all right? Is your throat okay?
Yeah, I feel okay.
Those were loud barks.
I don't know what's happening.
It's probably nothing. Anyway, so yeah. That was my introduction to this movie, and I watched it and I was like, this film is evil, and I love evil films, and it immediately was fascinating to me, and I thought it was really special for reasons that we will get into in our longer discussion on it. And yeah, I just couldn't believe that it had a little bit of an internet cult following when I watched it. I think it's gained a little bit more of one since I watched it. I don't think I was early to this one, but I think it's gotten a little bit more online traction since the first time I viewed it. But it's still not well known by any stretch of the imagination. This is like a weird little film.
Yeah, I think the three categories of people who have seen Be My Cat are the people like you and me who really enjoy this movie and understand every possible level that it is operating on.
Correct.
The people who are like, oh yeah, it was a kind of creepy found footage movie, but it had some good things and it had some bad things. And the people who are like severely turned off by it because of how vile and disgusting and skin crawling the vibes in this movie are, which I will reiterate again. I said it last week. I don't know if it's exactly a trigger warning because there's nothing in this movie that I think is like could be like explicitly like very triggering for someone.
Yeah.
It is, but it does deal a lot with violence against women and just an overall bad time atmosphere.
An overall really icky vibe.
Yeah.
And nothing graphic in this movie.
Yeah.
But it's still highly upsetting.
But very specific with what it chooses to show to the audience.
Yes.
In like there's like a Hitchcockian level of the type of information that this movie gives you and the way that it depicts the violence in ways that allow your brain to do all of the work.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind
Yes.
as we go through this episode. And also, if you're okay with that stuff and haven't seen Be My Cat, we've probably posted it on Twitter at this point because it's available free around the world, around the internet. Go in with an open mind and watch it.
Yes, but only if you are able to handle it. Please do not traumatize yourself for our podcast.
Yeah.
Yes. So David, that's my history with this movie. You watched this movie for the first time with me. I showed it to you. But I was curious, just because you're a little bit more of the researcher on this podcast, if there are any interesting but behind the scene facts that you've unearthed about this thing, because I know a couple things, but I don't really know all that much about it, and I just didn't know if you had found anything. But if you,
Justus, it sounds like something's trying to claw its way into our dimension of reality.
Yeah, it does. Almost as if we have wandered into room 402 from last week's film. It seems like just this room is full of cursed and evil vibes at the moment. Maybe we should record in a different room in my house next week. Just maybe a change of scenery would prevent all of this weird demonic
Yeah, it seems like the podcast studio is slowly turning into a Black Lodge-esque waiting room between dimensions of reality.
Yeah.
Where the supernatural forces or malevolent supernatural forces have taken dominion over our bodies, our minds, and souls.
Oh shit, I really hope I don't get possessed by Bob. That would suck so bad. To be possessed by Bob, can you imagine? Damn.
I did a little bit of research since we saw this together, along with the Podmaster, who also enjoyed this film.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a rare thing from her, that we all enjoy a film more or less to the same degree.
Yeah. High Priestess Pod really fucked with this one.
Yeah. So this actually started as a theater piece from Adrian Tofei.
Yes.
He has a background in theater.
Yes.
This is a character that he had been developing into like a one-man show, and it was started as like a 15-minute thing that turned into a 30-minute thing and then turned into a film. And it is the first film in a planned trilogy of films. He's working on the other two movies right now. We Put the World to Sleep and Pure. But this is his only film. And watching it, boy, can I tell that this was made by a theater kid.
Yes. This has one of the things that I like about this movie so much, we'll talk about this more, I'm sure, is that it's like a movie by theater actors for theater actors, right? Where so much of this movie is about the type of person who becomes obsessed with the artistry of acting, right? He's kind of the evil version, the evil, twisted, demonic version of Dustin Hoffman's character from Tootsie, right? Where he's like an actor, right? But he's not, though, because he's just like this guy from Redoute, which is actually who Adrian Tofei actually is, and he is an incredible actor. But this character that he's playing is also a psycho, right? So it's just this very interesting thing of the boundary between performance and reality, right? And how much of yourself do you put into a character, and are there aspects of the character that you are creating or that exist in the work that the text that you're bringing to life that then bleed over into you, and what is the what are the consequences of that as a person, right? Basically, can performance change your identity is one of the things that this movie is exploring, which is a very theater actory concept. So yeah, I agree.
And the movie starts with the usual text that we get in a found footage movie pretending this whole thing is real, where it says this was 25 hours of footage recovered from the Be My Cat incident in,
the Be My Cat
such
crime
and such
scene in Redoute, Romania. Yeah.
Romania. And I think he actually did shoot 25 hours worth of footage and then whittle it down to a 90-minute movie.
Adrian, if you're listening, which I know you actually might be, because he does comment on tons of reviews and like video essays and stuff about this movie, so he may listen to this episode. Adrian, if you are listening, release the 25-hour cut, my man. I want to see all of it. Give me that 25-hour cut. I'll watch it like it's a TV show.
So in this movie, as the character is meeting the different actresses, that is actually him, the real Adrian, meeting these actresses for the first time and improving these scenes in English, because something that you told me, a very important thing to know about this movie, anytime that the actors were speaking English on set, they were in character, and anytime they were speaking Romanian, they were out of character, to maintain a separation between the character and the actor, because Adrian Tofei is putting these women in very uncomfortable and very taxing situations.
Yes, he's being extremely frightening, and his behavior with them is extremely upsetting. So it's like understandable that they needed to create that boundary, to be like, now this is like Adrian, your co-actor, director, producer talking to you, versus Adrian the character. In English, please.
Yes.
Which he says it multiple times in this movie.
I think knowing that fact really reframes my viewing of this movie, because I think to those people who are very turned off by this movie, they could see it as exploitative or like a borderline snuff film.
Right.
But knowing that, I feel like this movie is actually, despite the improvisation, despite him shooting this for very low budget, kind of guerrilla style, it feels very controlled and precise.
Yes. Yeah. And a thing that I have also heard, I think I read an interview online with Adrian Tofei where he talked about this. Most of the dialogue in this movie is improv. So like the majority of the scenes where he's talking to one or more of the actresses, they're just doing improv in character. But the most graphic moments in this movie, and the movie doesn't get very graphic, but the moments that if you've seen the movie, you have an idea of which ones I'm talking about. Those were all very carefully like planned and scripted, and he like walked them through it before they did it. Like there was no improv with those moments, like the moments of physical violence in this movie, which I think is very important to note, because it's like, it's not just like this thing where he was like, we're improvising in character, and then I'm gonna like fucking grab you and strangle you or some shit.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, no, like the grabbing and strangling was like choreographed, and it was like they talked about it and they planned it, and it was only the kind of like dialogue scenes that were like full improv. So that also kind of like makes you like be like, no, like this is controlled. He like knows what he's doing here, you know.
Yeah. I don't. Is there anything else that you know about the movie that you want to share before we get into it?
No. Well, the other main thing is just if you look at pictures of Adrian Tofei, the director, his teeth aren't actually that gross. He clearly like put some shit on his teeth, because his teeth are so fucking nasty in this movie.
Okay.
And when you see him in real life, he has like beautiful pearly whites, which is just a thing that I thought was interesting, because it's like so much of his character is seems to be just him, but like a dark, twisted, evil freak version of him, right? Because I've like seen interviews with him, and he doesn't talk that different.
Mm-hmm.
He's not like doing a big impression, a big character.
Yeah.
It's subtle. But so it was interesting to me that he was like, but I am going to make my teeth grosser. Like that's this Adrian's thing, is that he doesn't brush his fucking teeth.
Yeah. Well, and he shot like the opening stuff in his house. Is shot in his house, and that's his mother.
His mom is played by his actual mom, which is so funny when at the end of the movie he's like, I have to go kill my mother.
mom.
I'm like, his mom probably saw this movie. His mom's, I think, credited as a producer on the movie, I think. And it's like, did she watch this and be like, he's threatening him? That's my son threatening to kill me in this movie, man. Anyway.
And also I think that most of what's in this movie, when he's just like improvising and monologuing to the camera, are the first takes.
Yeah. He didn't do a lot of like retakes of that stuff. Yeah. And man, we might as well talk about it right now.
Yeah.
He's such a good actor. Like, these being first takes a lot of the time is very impressive, because I think this performance, I don't mean any hyperbole here, I think this performance is like some of the best acting I've ever seen anyone do. And I think part of the reason that I feel that way is because the movie is almost 90 minutes of just watching this performance. So you get a ton of it. And so much of it is so good that I feel like by sheer quantity, I'm blown away by it in to some extent. But also, like, it's just really good.
Yeah.
Like, he's really compelling. And even in the moments of this movie where not a lot is happening, it's just a camera on this guy's face and he's just talking. He's talking sort of nonsensically, right? The character has kind of his own twisted internal logic, but like a lot of what he says doesn't make sense to a sane person.
But you can see that internal logic in the performance and hear it with how he's forming sentences and forming ideas.
And it's so compelling to watch.
Yeah.
Like, you can't take your eyes off it. It's like really riveting. And I'm like, man, he's fucking so good. It's really, really impressive.
Yeah, I think he's incredible. I think this performance is at the very least for me like the best acting I've ever seen in any found footage movie.
Oh yeah, easily.
Like, this is up there with Heather from Blair Witch.
Yeah,
I don't remember the actress's name who plays Heather.
Yeah.
But
I think her name's actually Heather.
Heather.
Right?
Yeah, because this is also doing the thing where everyone's name is just their real name.
Yes, yeah. Speaking of that, I think not just Adrian, but the three actresses in this movie, I think Sonia, Flory, and Alexandra are also equally good.
Yeah.
Like, I think all three of them are amazing actors. The thing that, because you were saying, like, this movie sort of runs the risk of being perceived as like exploitative or like like some kind of like weird snuff adjacent, like violence against women is being fetishized or something. It like runs the risk of being perceived that way because of like the narrative of the movie. I think the thing that helps this subvert that, in addition to the stuff you already called out, is we spend enough time with each of these actresses and the actresses are good enough at acting, right, at being these character versions of themselves, that you get to know each of them. They all have very distinct personalities, and you are endeared to all of them and are fully rooting for all three of them. There is not one of these girls where you're kind of like, oh, can't wait till he kills this one, right? It's not that. It is like all three of these girls, you're like, God, I hope she gets away from this guy. Because you like them all for different reasons, and they're all distinct, fully like actualized human beings. And that comes down, because it's improv, exclusively to the strength of these performers. I just think it's so incredible what they managed to pull off.
And for me, improv can either be terrible.
Oh yeah.
Or really good.
This is the like top 0.1% of improv. Yeah.
Well, but also it feels very realistic. It never feels like a performance. Is part of what makes this movie so disturbing and effective, is that even though these actors are improvising, their performances feel believable. They feel like real people.
Yeah.
And there's no moment that feels even the violent scenes. Nothing in this movie feels rehearsed or planned or orchestrated. It all feels like viscerally realistic.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it so effective. Is it feels that way, but you know that there is like a lot of boundaries that are put in place and a lot of preparation for certain moments in this movie.
Yeah, but Adrian does such a good job of like taking advantage of the truly spontaneous things that did happen while he was filming it.
Yeah.
That it makes the planned moments feel less planned. For example, there's like when the fire's coming out of that chimney on the street that he's filming on, he's just filming it. They didn't do that for the movie. That was just happening. Right? And the ambulance going by and him saying, people are dying. Okay. Right? It's like an ambulance just went by and he just said that. They didn't like hire someone to drive a fake ambulance, And so they
and when Sonia calls the police,
yes,
the actress actually called
the police. Yep, and the police just showed up.
Yeah,
yeah.
And however they got out of that situation, they did.
Mm.
But you see part of it in the movie.
Yeah.
It's so I hate to be a pretentious actor, artsy fartsy guy, like Adrian is in this movie, but there's a purity to this that I find so compelling.
Yes. Yeah. It is. It's really art at its. I think like horror as a subgenre of like fiction, right? Fiction at its core is just like storytelling, and I think that this is like weirdly kind of the purest distillation of horror storytelling that I've seen in a while, right? In terms of like movies that were new to me, because I only saw this for the first time a few years ago. Because narratively it is extremely simple, and it is driven almost exclusively by character and by like very relatable, like empathetic characters who are feeling emotions that are grounded and real and relatable. And so it's just like, like it's like like you said, it's like the purest essence, right? of this type of story.
Yeah.
It's just like all about what each of these people are feeling moment to moment. And the improvised dialogue is like such a big part of that. But,
yeah, James Cameron was talking about, when he was shooting Avatar 2, this is the only time in history that James Cameron and Adrian Tofei have been mentioned in the same breath. When he was shooting Avatar 2, he had like pre-rendered versions of the background CG environments for the actors to look at before they did their scenes. And what he found out was the actors weren't really interested in that. And the quote that he said is, "Actors just need other actors."
Yep.
And that's what this movie is.
Yep.
It's 2 actors, a camera, and a street in Romania or a basement in Romania.
Yeah.
And with these characters that they have spent time on and developed and worked on themselves internally.
Yeah.
Just playing and going at it.
Yeah.
And creating one of the most unique horror films that I've ever seen.
I agree 1000%. So the way I think we should handle the rest of this episode, David, because I was thinking about this and I was like, I don't want us to hit the same points too many times. So I think what we should do next, now that we've gotten all of that out of the way, is we should do a very quick, like 10-minute plot synopsis of just the main events that happen in this movie for people who maybe don't want to watch this movie because they either it just didn't feel like it and don't have the time and didn't take our suggestion, or abided by the trigger warning and were like, maybe this one's not for me, right? But we still want them to be able to enjoy the episode. So I think we do like a really quick, just like major plot beat synopsis, and then spend the rest of the time talking about thematic stuff, because that's the other big thing that we haven't touched on yet, and I think that'll be the bulk of the conversation. Probably.
Yeah, I think so too.
Okay.
Because this movie structurally is pretty simple.
Yeah.
One thing before we move on to that I forgot to ask you during the beginning of our background session.
Yeah.
Does Anne Hathaway know about this movie?
I don't know. I feel like it has gotten enough traction that I would be shocked if she didn't, just because I feel like someone within her orbit must have heard about this.
Yeah, someone on her PR team or security team must be like,
right.
For all future events that Anne Hathaway is at, Adrian Tofei is not allowed.
Yes, he's
on the blacklist.
Yeah. Just in case. Because we know he was probably just making his little indie horror movie and doesn't actually feel this way, but like, just in case. I imagine even if she doesn't know the name Adrian Tofei, she probably knows that some weirdo made Adrian, if you're listening, I use weirdo affectionately, made a found footage horror movie where a guy's obsessed with her and kills women. I think she must. I don't know. Hollywood is like enough of like an industry town that I'm like, some fucking person who, because there's some American sounding names who are producers of this movie. I'm like, some fucking Hollywood person was connected to this in some way, at least getting it distributed in the US. Like, some people around her must know. Anyway, yes. So this movie, basically it starts, we meet Adrian. He is living with his mother. He's renting a pension house. He hires 3 actresses to come be in a movie called Be My Cat. He's making this movie for Anne Hathaway. Ostensibly, it is proof of concept for him to get her to star in another movie that he will direct with her in it, right? And then first actress comes. Her name is Sonia. She goes through the worst acting exercises of all time, which we can probably delve into deeper when we like hit the thematic stuff.
Yeah,
there's some shit I want to say about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to summarize it real quick, they're on a street in Romania, and he's pretending to be this guy who's obsessed with his actress, and he's coming up to her and bothering her, and like the acting exercise is you can't run away, and you can't let me get within 1 meter of you, and this happens for like 20 minutes.
Yeah. It's maybe to me the most uncomfortable scene in the movie.
Yeah.
Which is crazy considering some of the other shit that happens in this movie. But yeah. So she has a terrible experience doing this impossible acting exercise from hell. And then is chloroformed, dressed in a catsuit, tied up and strangled. So that's actress 1.
That's a Cannibal Corpse album title. Or song title.
Yeah. So then second actress shows up. Her name is Flory. She is like a little bit more like strong-willed than Sonia was, and also she wants to fuck him, which is very funny.
Does she want to fuck him, or is she like has she caught on to the fact that something is up, and she's like, well, if you're gonna fuck me, then just fuck me and get it over with?
I think it might be that. I think you might be right.
Yeah.
Which again plays into one of the thematic things that I wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
But yes, so she shows up. He kind of immediately doesn't like her very much because she is being more like strong-willed with him.
And he says that the pictures that she sent in were different, and she's gained weight since then.
Yeah.
He also goes on about this with her for like 5 straight minutes.
Yes. He spends a lot of time calling this woman fat, which is very, very upsetting and very unkind.
Yeah.
And yes, so then after Flory shows up and they have this interaction, the third actress, Alexandra, shows up. Flory and Alexandra are both there for a little bit. They're like shooting the movie together. Then there is a scene that Adrian wants to shoot with only Flory, which is a scene where he ties her to the bed and then proceeds to perform an operation. He mutilates her body with a knife. He cuts her up a bunch, and then goes and he leaves her and then comes back to dress her in a catsuit, and he realizes that she has in fact died from blood loss. He goes to get some trash bags to like dispose of her body. While he's gone, Alexandra finds the dead body, and that sets us up for like our big extended final sequence, which is basically an extended standoff between Adrian and Alexandra.
Yeah.
Where Alexandra is being threatened with a knife and just trying to get out of this basement alive, and Adrian is trying to decide what to do because now she knows that he's murdered someone, but he doesn't really want to kill her. So it's just this huge, long improv scene that they have, and it ends with her basically convincing him, maybe, because the ending is sort of ambiguous. The optimistic reading of the ending is that Alexandra successfully convinces Adrian to leave her alive and run away to go be with Anne Hathaway. Right? Because she plays into this obsession that he has with Anne Hathaway, and thinks that it convinces him that she thinks his love is real and that he should go pursue it. So that's the optimistic reading of the ending. But because it's ambiguous, you can also read it as soon as that camera shuts off, he just kills her. Right? That's the other option. And the movie doesn't tell you which one happens.
Yeah. But basically what happens is he's been talking to the camera the whole time as if the camera were Anne Hathaway, which we'll talk about thematically when we get to the themes and stuff. And during this final standoff, Anne becomes real to him.
Yes.
So he feels like he can shut off the camera and go get her, and Alexandra is trying to convince him to do that. Yeah, and again, for those of you who are maybe unsure about the violent content in this movie, well, stuff like the chloroforming and the strangulation, you see that all on screen. There is no gore or anything otherwise in this movie.
You see some blood in this movie, but it is in like a stylized way, and it's not graphic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When Flory's being cut with the knife, you just see like blood spray against a sheet that he has hung up.
Yeah, it's kind of like PG-13 blood, to be completely honest.
Yeah.
It's like really not even that. Yeah.
And after she's died, we don't see like, her intestines hanging out or anything like that.
No, yeah. It's not graphic. The sheet's there the whole time, blocking most of it.
Yeah.
And it's left up to your imagination, which makes it more horrible. It's so much more horrible. So yeah, that's what happens in the movie. I wanted to get that out of the way first, like I said, because thematically, there is so much going on in this movie that I want to talk to you about. And I feel like if we were trying to hit the themes and the plot points at the same time, I would just find myself repeating myself a bunch.
Yeah, moment to moment in this
happen.
movie, because it is so repetitive and it's such a simple plot.
Yeah.
I don't think that would be particularly useful.
Yes. So the first thing I want to talk about is there is the easiest, most kind of surface level reading of this film, which I think is a big level that this film is operating on. And I think it's the easiest to address, which is like this movie is in part about the parasocial relationships that people form with celebrities, right? And I think that the big thing there, the big kind of narrative device, is the thing you already mentioned, where he's talking to the camera as if it is Anne Hathaway, right? And this time especially, I was just like thinking about it. I was thinking about the fact that we all carry around these things that have a camera on the front that is pointing at us all the time when we're using them, right? And I was like, oh shit. Like when I'm like on Instagram or whatever, and I'm seeing some famous person's post or whatever, like even though the camera's not on and recording me necessarily, there's always just a camera like pointed at me as I'm doing that. And it's like, it gives you the illusion that you're in like a two-party interaction with these famous people who you see online, right? Whose posts you can comment on, and maybe they'll see it and even like it or something. And then you've interacted with them, but it's like, you haven't. They're not flesh and blood to you. They are ones and zeros on a screen. And like the camera that is pointing at your face, they're never going to see what that camera's pointing at, which is like the same thing in this movie. Like Anne Hathaway's never going to see this movie in the world of the movie itself, right? Now whether she has actually seen this movie or not, I don't know. But like within the world of the narrative, like she's never going to see this. It's evidence.
I'm just imagining Anne in her presumably nice mansion in the Hollywood Hills, making a big old bowl of popcorn and turning on Tubi one night, snuggling up under a blanket and watching Be My Cat.
You know what would be the funniest possible option to me is if she was a fan of this movie. If she saw it and was like, yeah, that was really well made. I like that.
They should do, those interviews that you see of like, it's like an art, like directors on directors, where two artists are interviewing each other. Adrian, Tofei, and Anne Hathaway should do one of those.
Nothing in this world would make me happier than seeing that. Oh my god. Oh my god. But yeah, like, so there's the parasocial relationship thing, right? Which I don't feel like there's like a ton more that we have to say about that, because again, I think that's kind of the surface level that this movie is operating on. It's just like this idea, and this is like a real thing. There was like that guy who got so obsessed with Bjork that he was like stalking her and eventually like filmed his own suicide because Bjork was dating someone else, and it was like a big thing on the internet. So it's like, this shit really happens.
Sure.
Like there are actually freaks out there who are like, I own this person who I have never actually met and have just seen pictures of, and they like belong to me, and if I can't get them, I'm like gonna do violence.
Some people get really into Jodie Foster and think that shooting Reagan will be the ticket to meeting her. So
and
and then they get released from prison and become an indie folk star.
Someone please let that man book a venue. His tweets are so sad. He's like, oh, the venue canceled me again. And I'm like, John.
Just let John play his music.
He shot Reagan. Reagan didn't even die. And also, he shot Reagan. I think we can forgive him. Like, just, not that I'm condoning attempted presidential assassinations for any CIA people who are listening.
Yeah. we really timed that joke.
Yes, whatever.
It's whatever.
Who gives a shit?
Yeah.
Nobody listens to this
Unlike some
podcast
other people I could mention, Hankley actually hit him. So
anyway, parody satire, except not really. But yeah. So there's that. There's that. Right. I don't know if you had anything else to say about the parasocial relationship.
I think at the most surface level, it's about that. The thing that I was thinking about while watching this movie is it doesn't matter that it's Anne Hathaway. Mm-hmm. It could be anyone.
Right.
Because Anne is just the camera to him. And more, he's talking to the camera, and there's a point in the movie where he starts talking to the camera like in real time, where he's like, "And don't watch this. I don't want you to see this.
Yeah.
I'll be right back," or whatever.
Yes. One of my favorites is when he leaves it in the dark basement right before Alexandra discovers Florrie's body. And he's like, "Okay, and I'm going to leave you here for a second, but it's going to be dark, but don't be scared." Like he's like talking to the camera like that. And he's like, "I'll be right back. It'll be just 10 minutes. And I'm like, "Oh, that's very unsettling."
I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
Like thematically, but he wants to fuck that camera.
Right. Which honestly,
and it's kind of a Peeping Tom thing.
That's exactly what I was gonna say. Yeah.
The camera as a violation of who you are, and like the camera stealing your soul, quote unquote.
And the fact what Peeping Tom is about ultimately is that the advent of handheld cameras was the death knell of personal privacy, which it's insane that Peeping Tom made that observation in 1960 because it's like, yeah, that was completely correct. Right? There is no privacy anymore because we all carry cameras around in our pockets at all times, right? And that's what that movie's about. And I think to your point, yes, I was gonna say Peeping Tom. Like it also is that in this movie where it's like, because everybody has access to record anything they want at all times and everything all the time if they want, right? It's like nobody ever has to be alone with themselves or alone with other people because there's this disembodied I that can watch and be like a voyeur of like your entire life now. So yeah, I agree. That was also a thing that I was thinking about this time. And Peeping Tom was like a big thing I was thinking about this time. Sorry, petered off there for a second because I felt an itching in my balls. I think a demon might have snuck in through my urethra. Anyway, I didn't know if you had another thematic point that you wanted to touch on. I have a big one.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. The thing that was hitting me this most recent watch about this movie that I've thought about the other times I watched it as well, but like this time I was like, I think this for me is what the movie is about most. Is I think in a really, really big way, this movie is about the experience of women in the entertainment industry. I think that the three women and how they're treated and how they respond to Adrian are different ways that women historically have and continue to deal with toxic, manipulative, sexually abusive men in positions of power in the industry of stage and screen, right? In the entertainment industry.
That's the second level that this movie can be interpreted on. I think the obvious one is the parasocial relationships. The second one is just violence against women in general.
Yeah.
But talk to me a little bit more about violence against women in the entertainment industry specifically.
Yes. So I think it's notable, right, that Adrian the character, not Adrian the... Well, Adrian the actual guy was also the director and producer of this movie, but Adrian the character is directing and producing a film that he has hired these actresses to do. So he's already in a position of power over them because he's the one giving them money for being in his movie, right? And he weaponizes that position of power against all three of them in different ways, and they respond to him in different ways. The scene with Sonia that I said is like the most unsettling scene in the movie to me, where he's making her do that acting exercise. It goes on so long and it's so pointed, and I know that they were improvising it, so I don't know how much they intended me to read this into it, but it's like, it's art. Once it exists and it's no longer the creator's property, like, your interpretation is the art. So for me, I was just like, this feels like such a like spot on and pointed and like lengthy treatise on like abusive directors, right? It's like the Hitchcock thing and the Kubrick thing, right? Where it's like, yeah, we idolize these guys, we love the movies that they made, and there's all these horrible stories from the women who worked with them being like, yeah, he fucking screamed at me and called me a stupid bitch and made me do this take fucking 70 times.
Yeah.
You know? And it's like, and that's so much of what he's doing to her in this scene. And she's like, you can't fucking do this to me. And at one point, he's saying over and over, how are you going to stop me? How are you going to stop me? Right? And I was like, oh shit. Like, that is like every big Hollywood director pre-Me Too era. And I'm sure it continues to happen even now. People are just more cognizant of it and more aware of it. But it was just like, that was hitting me really big this time, you know? And then the same thing with when Flory shows up, the interpretation that you were saying of like, she's basically being like, well, this creepy dude clearly just wanted to sleep with me. If that's what I'm here for, we might as well get that out of the way now, right? That's also a way that women in the entertainment industry have reacted to predatory men in positions of power over them. Is basically like, okay, I guess I have to do the fucking sexual favor for this guy that he's asking me for, because he's gonna keep pestering me until I do it, and he's in a position of power over me and I have to work with him.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's like, that's all wrapped up, I think, in like, yeah, like the whole Hollywood system and how that has historically worked against the autonomy of the women that they hire.
Well,
right?
the scene with Flory tied to the bed.
Yeah.
That also reminded me of stories of Michael Winner, who worked with Canon Films, shooting like Death Wish 2 and 3. And I can't remember the actress, I can't remember which film. They were shooting a rape scene, and where she's like being raped on this mattress in an alley or something. And she's naked, and she's like, and the actress is like, can I get a blanket or something? Can I get a break? And Michael Winner, because he was a giant piece of shit, like, didn't give her a break. She just had to sit there naked as they shot this rape scene over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Or even James Cameron shooting like scenes with Kate Winslet in Titanic over and over and over again, where she's like, she almost drowned in one take, and I think Cameron eventually claimed that like he didn't notice, but you know, I think there's varying degrees to those stories. You know, you mentioned Kubrick. Shelley Duvall recently passed away. Rest in peace.
R.I.P.
to the legend.
Yes, absolute legend. One of the best.
And of course, there's the stories going around about how horrible Kubrick was to her in The Shining.
Yeah.
And those have been mostly refuted by her as far as like it leaving any sort of lasting trauma on her.
Still
but,
not an okay way to treat a person who's
right,
working for you.
Right.
Yeah.
There's still those stories of her doing takes over and over and over again.
Yeah. Also, Jack Nicholson often absolved in the criticism of the treatment of Shelley Duvall, but there's also accounts of him being a real dick to her.
I haven't read those, but I know that I've seen like behind the scenes footage of him like hyping himself up and getting ready for a scene.
Yeah.
Where he's clearly like trying to do a method acting thing and just is very, very intense and swinging this axe around the set, where it's like, there's PAs running by you, Jack. What are you doing here?
Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, and with the scene on the bed that you were talking about, the thing that I think that illustrates your point the best is when he's tying Flory to the bed. She still thinks it's a scene for the movie. She doesn't know she's about to be actually murdered yet. Although I think she suspects. You can see the fear start entering her face around here, which I think is immaculately well done by this actress, where you can see her go from like, okay, I'm getting tied to this bed because this is a scene in this movie, and like the farther it gets when he ties her down and then when he tells Alexandra to leave, she starts like laughing a bunch, and it's like nervous, like I can't believe I'm in this situation now laughter, and like I hope I'm just gonna film this movie, but this is getting really weird. And then like you can see it on her face too, where she starts realizing like, oh, I'm not shooting a scene for this movie, this guy's gonna kill me.
Yeah.
And she realizes it before it starts happening. You can see her notice before he starts cutting her, which is very upsetting.
And there's the other level to this where we just know that this is a real actress,
yeah,
stripped down to her underwear,
Yeah.
who is tied
Yeah.
to a metal bed frame.
yeah,
And there may be some there's like a sheet that's down. Maybe there is some padding under there or something like that we can't really see. But to a certain extent, this is an actual woman who is tied to a metal bed frame.
yeah.
And I would like to assume the best of Adrian Tofei.
Right. Hopefully he, made sure that she was comfortable and felt safe.
And this actress gives a great performance.
Yes.
But you get it. Like this is a difficult acting environment for an actress to work in.
Yeah.
And it is also revealing something about the way that directors treat actresses. It have historically treated actresses in movie history.
Yeah.
I also think about, not to just like throw a bunch of names out of stories, but it's like in stories and shit. But it does happen. Like Quentin Tarantino actually strangling Diane Kruger on Inglourious Bastards because the shot didn't look real enough.
Yeah.
So he's like, I'm just gonna choke you with my own hands.
Yeah.
And we're gonna film it, and then that's what's in the movie.
Yeah. I like a lot of his movies, but honestly, fuck that guy. He also is responsible for like lasting physical injury to Uma Thurman. Like, because wasn't there
There was a
car accident.
Car
right?
accident.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, fuck Quentin Tarantino. I like his movies, but
I won't say fuck Quentin Tarantino, but
come on,
bit
man.
of a weirdo. Bit of a weirdo.
Yeah. Anyway, the thing, not to backtrack us once again, but the main thing in the bed scene that I wanted to call out in as it relates to this conversation is the moment when he's tying her to the bed and she says it's too tight about the restraints, and he says no, it's not, and she's like yes, it is, and he's like it's only for like 10 minutes, right? And then just like keeps doing it, and obviously in the like narrative of the movie, he has to tie her tight because he intends on actually cutting her with a knife. But it is the Hitchcock thing, right? Of like the actress is like, I am letting you know I'm uncomfortable, and the director being like, I'm telling you that you are wrong about the way you feel, right? And like this is what the art demands, and you will deal with it, and I am not giving you a choice. And like that moment struck me so hard with this kind of theme in mind last night, because I was just like, oh yeah, directors be doing that shit, like it's too tight. No, it's not, and I was just like, man, it just, that's one of the things that is so evil about this movie, is it just gets me thinking about like the actual examples of this in the real world, and I'm just like, man, fucking so many people have like suffered so much trauma for like the movies that we watch. Anyway, that's probably all we need to say on like that point, I think. But that was like a big one I wanted to hone in on. Oh, the other one, actually, really briefly, the other piece of that point, Alexandra. Yes. Sorry, frog in my throat. David, did I by any chance just bark like a dog?
Yeah, dude.
What the fuck is going on?
I thought it was maybe your dogs at first, but
no, they're not even in here right now.
you like foamed at the mouth a little bit and your eyes rolled back into your head.
Seriously?
Like a shark.
Gosh. I think I might need to, I don't know, get like a crucifix in here or something. Get some holy water.
Maybe get a rabies shot.
Yeah, or you know what? I bet that's what it is. I bet it's not demons at all. I bet I just have a case of rabies.
Yeah.
I bet I was bit by like a chipmunk or something. Vampire bat. And it'll be fine. I'll just go to the doctor. Anyway, yeah. The other thing is Alexandra, right? And how she, I think, is like a third example of how women interact with this, which is she appeases him, right? She just tells him everything he wants to hear. And that it's pointed that she is the one who maybe survives, right? Because it's like she survives by just playing into all of his ideas, all of his ego, his inflated idea of how amazing of an artist he is, and how what a masterpiece this will be. How Anne Hathaway is the love of his life. And
yeah, she gives him what he wants.
Yes, exactly, and that's how you survive a man like this, both in the world, right, as a woman, right, but also in the entertainment industry, the way that you go along to get along, right. And it's basically like, oh yeah, like you're saying a lot of weird shit to me, and like he says some of the nastiest shit. He says the nastiest shit to Flory, but he's also really nasty to Alexandra, because when she tries to run, he keeps saying over and over, "This bitch tried to escape. This fucking bitch tried to escape." And it's the only time he uses the word bitch in the movie is when she tries to run away from him, and which is also just. There's so much in this movie. It's also very pointed that he does eventually use the word bitch, because he is one of those guys who's like, oh, I like women so much more than men because women are so like innocent and nice, right?
And then the minute that they do something that
he doesn't
like or emasculates him,
then
he devolves to making sexist comments.
To misogyny. Yep.
Misogyny.
Yeah. Because women are so cute and innocent and sweet and worthy of protection and love is misogyny. It's just a nice way to dress up your misogyny, right? But then as soon as Alexandra does something he doesn't like, it's just the nasty regular calling women bitches misogyny. But yes, so the whole thing with her kind of going along to get along, I just also saw as like just such a recognizable type of interaction that like actresses have with directors and producers.
The other thing about that scene with Alexandra, I think a lot of actors aspire to being the type of actor who is just down for anything. I'll go along with it because it fuels their ego, it fuels their creativity. They want to prove their self to the director, and sometimes that's great. There are other times where I think like Brendan Fraser doing his own stunts in the Mummy movies and injuring himself. There's that back and forth between the director pressuring the actor to give more than they may be capable of giving, and the actor wanting to prove themselves to the director.
Yes, the actor wanting to go farther and farther, which I think is actually a good transition point into another thing that this movie is about,
which is being an artist.
Yes. Yep. I feel like you have things to say about this.
Yeah, there's the message I got from this movie, weirdly enough this time, is there's something like perverse about the act of creation itself, because it is like when you are it feels like this movie is saying when you are creating art you are playing God, and that's kind of what Adrian feels like to me in this movie.
Yeah,
is this is art that is stemming from his own ego, his own delusions and desires. And along the way, he is sacrificing. He uses the word sacrifice a lot. Yeah. He is sacrificing himself for this, but more importantly, like sacrificing his true self by trying to prove himself to Anne in all of these ridiculous ways.
Yeah.
But also sacrificing the actresses he's working with.
Yeah. Yep. And the way he rationalizes it is it's a heightened version of a thing that I, as an actor who have worked with lots of different actors over the course of my life, have seen in other actors. Like it's a heightened version of it. I've never seen anyone, as far as I know, of kill people for a role, but like his rationalizations, like when he chloroforms Sonia. And then she's on the bed and he's like, I'm going to undress her, but I'm only doing this because it's what the character would do. And I need to do this as the character.
It's method acting.
Right? Yeah. And
It's a heightened version of I'm going to be a method actor and commit to this role completely,
yes,
and sort of use that as an excuse to be a dick to people.
Yes, and he spends so long, and the camera just holds for so long. By the way, lots of great audition monologues in this movie. I think that's a funny time to mention that I had that observation watching this movie while we're talking about this. I was just like, oh shit, you could audition with a lot of this stuff. Yeah, he's doing this long ass monologue about how Anne shouldn't get jealous that he's undressing this actress.
Mm-hmm.
He has to do it for the character. It doesn't really want to do. I would never do this. He even says, like, me, Adrian, I would never do this. But this guy, Adrian, in this movie, he would do this. So I have to be him and do it, right? And it's exactly the thing that you just said, where it's like, yeah, actors, there is a type of actor, and even people who are not this way, I think, by nature, sometimes fall into the trap of it when they enter the world of acting. They use it because acting is it is a form of lying to people that is not only allowed and like condoned, but also celebrated, right? And I think that there is a certain type of person who either through natural proclivity or just like once they get a taste of it, they just like lean into it, uses that to be like, oh, because I can lie to people and they like it, I can get away with whatever I want, right? Like nothing I do has to come from a true or genuine place ever again if it's in the service of this thing, right? And so it's exactly that in this movie, and it's just like, I like I said, I don't think anyone other than a theater actor could have made this movie because I just encountered so many of those types of people in the theater, where it's just like, yeah, it's an excuse for me to, like behave in ways that otherwise, I wouldn't want to be perceived as like being the type of person who behaves that way, but I'm allowed to do it because I'm like playing a part.
For me, it's a way to not be myself, right?
Yeah, right.
And there are things inside of me that I'm not able to exercise in my own regular day-to-day life.
Yep.
So doing that through the guise of acting, or even I have experience doing performance poetry on stage. That's an outlet for me. That's a way for me to express those things. You made a comment after opening night of our show that you said something like, it seemed like you were really in it.
Yeah.
And truthfully, that run of the show, I was really in it.
Yeah.
I was not 100% myself.
Right.
And there was part of me that goes up on stage, turns off David, turns on the character, and doesn't exactly know what happened for the next 10 or 15 minutes that I'm in a scene, and then I get off stage and I'm myself again, and I'm like, what was I just doing?
Yeah. And when you say that there's something that is like that this movie is sort of saying is like perverse and unholy about that act, I do agree with you, and also like that the movie is saying that, but I also sort of feel like I've felt that way at times as an actor. There is a really interesting thing that I experience where if I have like a little bit of a cold or a little bit of like an upset stomach, or I like really have to pee backstage while I'm acting, there's like some minor physical malady or discomfort that I'm going through. When I step on stage in character, I stop feeling it. Like I literally, if I could be like dancing around, like, where's the fucking bathroom? I'm going to wet myself in the wings. And as soon as I step out on stage and start saying dialogue, my body like shuts it off.
More than in a way that's just like, I just got to push through this scene and then I can go to the bathroom.
It's not a conscious thing. As soon as the lines start coming out, it's basically like, boop, right? Character doesn't have to pee, right? And it's a weird thing I've experienced, and I've sort of talked to some other actors who have experienced a similar thing. Not all actors can relate to that experience, but they're like, yeah, I don't know what that is. It's like your brain tricks your body into thinking it's not yours. And like, that's like a disgusting Cronenbergian idea in a weird way, right? That my brain is so powerful that it can it can successfully fool my body into thinking it doesn't have a case of the sniffles when I'm this other guy, when this other guy is puppeteering my body, right? And it's like, I don't know if I wholly enjoy how that makes me feel about my relationship between my own mind and body. You know? So I kind of think that that's one of the reasons this movie clicks so well with me, is because like I've experienced shit like that, right? And I've experienced the stuff you're talking about too, where it's like you get off stage and you're like, I feel like I sort of just blacked out, like the words just came out of me. Right? And it's unsettling. It's unsettling to feel like, oh, I didn't have full autonomy of like my own body while I was doing that, you know?
And in the moment, I'm reacting to things and coming up with ideas. And, you know, on opening night, I improvised a lot of things that we hadn't done in rehearsal.
Yeah.
I can't necessarily rationalize or tell you where those things came from.
Yeah.
It was just like, oh, in this very intense moment, what if I pulled out this knife and threatened this other character in a way that I haven't before?
Yeah.
Or what if I did this specific blocking movement to be, you know, a bit more aggressive and belittling to this other character? And I think that is because Brutus is one of the more complex roles that I've ever played.
Right. So
and
you have more room to explore stuff like that.
And is a very intense character.
Yeah.
So not, you know, my mind has been in dark, intense places in order to get into that character. But to a certain extent, I turn it on and off between me getting off and on stage.
Yeah.
And of course there's stories about like, you know, Heath Ledger getting really into character for the Joker and shit like that.
Why are all motherfuckers always ruining their brains for the Joker? What is it about that fucking cartoon that makes like relatively reasonable? Jared Leto, I guess, was never relatively reasonable. But you know, it just we don't need to be killing ourselves for the fucking clown prince of crime. Come on.
I was watching this movie and I was like, you know, people are always like, Willem Dafoe should play the Joker.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, shut the fuck up. The dude's like in his 60s. Let him work with Robert Eggers.
Yeah, let him
do his Wes Anderson movies.
Shit. Yeah.
Adrian Tofei should play the Joker.
1000%.
give Adrian
–
Tofei the Joker.
And like he should just not prepare. He should just do this performance again.
he could fucking crush it. He was so good.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think the thing that I think is interesting about this movie is all of the shit that we just said, like totally goes into it, right? Where it does kind of show us that like weird, squishy, perverse boundary between character and actor. I also think because the movie is unequivocally anti-Adrian's actions, right? By taking the actions of an actor who has blurred that boundary too much into an extreme level of like horror, where he is chloroforming women and undressing them and dressing them in catsuits and tying them up and strangling them and cutting their stomachs with knives, right? That positions the movie as unequivocally anti that, right? And I think, weirdly, the optimistic ending of this movie, the optimistic reading, right? Where it's like, yeah, and then she has acted opposite, Alexandra has acted opposite him, has been a good enough scene partner that he just does what he says he's gonna do and leaves, and she lives. Right, and calls the police. Assuming the optimistic ending, I kind of think what the movie is saying is like, hey, yeah, acting sometimes can be very intense and very personal and can come from places that are very raw, and it can have like weird psychological and even physical effects on the actor. But at the end of the day, we're all just playing make pretend, you know? It's like not real. And so I think if the Alexandra ending is basically she lies convincingly enough to him that she survives where the other women didn't, right? It's like, yeah, because she was pretending, right? She's not actually gonna like forgive him and let him go off to Anne and be like, well, guess I'll never talk about this again, right? It's like, no, she is still freaked out. She still hates this guy, right? And thinks he's creepy and gross. And as soon as he leaves, she's going to be in that closet being like, okay, I just have to wait 3 minutes for him to be out of the building.
Yeah.
And then I'm calling the fucking cops.
Well,
right?
and it's the reality of being a woman in the world
Yeah.
and encountering a creepy guy, a guy you don't want to talk to.
Right.
And trying to get out of that situation without angering him because he might fucking kill you.
Yeah. And I guess that's also, I'm just thinking of this right now, but I guess that's also kind of a thing in this movie, which is that, like, in that last scene, Alexandra is acting as convincingly as Adrian is, right? The character Adrian in the movie, this gets way this gets way too meta. The character Adrian in the movie is acting as the character Adrian in the movie within the movie Be My Cat. Right? And he is acting very convincingly to the point where he has convinced himself that he is the character. Alexandra is acting equally convincingly. This actress is doing an incredible job performing it in a way where she seems really genuine and heartfelt about, like, oh, like, I don't even care if you kill me. I just care about your love. Like, I just care that you're happy, right? And she's doing such a good job. And I think with what you just said, it makes me think about it and be like, well, yeah, but the boundary doesn't get blurry for her because she has to do this shit all the time to just move through the world as a woman, right? She just, like, the women just have to act more in their day-to-day, because if they show men like this, how their true feelings, men can be unpredictable and violent as a result of it. And men don't have to cover up how they feel about interactions like this in the same way nearly as much, you know? So, like, there's less of a slippery slope for Alexandra to, like, get confused. What's the character? What's me? Because it's like, no, I know what's the character and what's me because I have to deal with this shit all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Which I guess we haven't really talked about it. We talked about it, like, with the entertainment industry thing. But there is, I guess, like, maybe a little bit more to say just about, like, how this movie is just also a commentary on, like, violence against women.
Yeah.
There's that's big in the Sonia scene, where he is just pestering her and will not leave her alone, even when she's like, I don't even want to be in the movie anymore. Which, by the way, I love when he is shooting that scene with her before she's, like, fully like, no, this is not me, the character, this is me, the actress, telling you to fuck off. Like, right before that, he's like, okay, in this scene, like, this guy comes out at you and you really tell him off, right? And she's like, well, I don't understand. I don't get the motivation of this. If I don't know this guy, why would I say this to him? And he's like, yeah, just do it. And so they film the scene, and I do love her line of, you are ugly and you are disgusting and you smell like shit and you are a loser. It's just so good. She really tells him off. But then he does the thing where he just annoys her into not really having a good improv response for him, and then just starts being like, oh, you love me, you love me, you love me.
Yeah.
And it just reminded me of, like, every conversation that I've seen screenshotted and shared on Twitter from, like, some random hot woman's DMs, right? Where it's like, if you give these guys a fucking crumb, they're like, I'm entitled to your attention. Right? And it's just like, there's so much of that in this scene, but also in this movie as well. He's like, he's just every weird guy in, like, the Instagram comments being like, beautiful girls. Right? Like, that's this dude's energy.
You are so sexy. I love you.
Yes.
Just like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just like, ugh. But then when
beautiful feet, smiley face.
But then when Flory confronts him with it and is like, okay, you want to fuck me? Fuck me. He's like, I can't. I'm saving myself for Anne. Because, like, being confronted by a woman who's like, okay, like, you want sexuality from me, I'll give it to you. He's like, well, that's not how girls are supposed to be. They're supposed to be innocent, right? I'm supposed to be the aggressor. It makes me uncomfortable that, like, you're the aggressor. So it's just like, it all just feels like so much like fucking incel shit too. Yeah.
There are 3 moments in this movie that I really honed in on this time, where the actresses and Adrian are confronted by random everyday people, and they're very, very brief.
Mhm.
When he's torturing Flory in the basement, two guys come up to him and he convinces, like, oh, it's fake blood, we're shooting a movie. That's another thing. Every time someone's screaming, he's like, everyone knows that we're shooting a movie.
Yep.
So the two guys that come up, one of them is actually one of the producers of the film.
Yeah.
So that's clearly like something that was rehearsed and planned.
Yeah.
The other two moments are, of course, the police officers coming up, where he somehow convinces them to wander off, to leave him alone.
Yeah.
And those are both clearly just like guys trusting other guys.
Yep.
And a lot of people I was reading like reviews of this movie criticize this movie for taking like leaps in logic with those moments. I don't necessarily think so.
I don't think so either. I definitely think that there's first of all, a lot of cops in the world. And he even says that, by the way, before she calls the cops. He's like, they're going to be on my side. He says it to her before she even dials. And he's right. Right? He's like, they'll sympathize with me. And then the dudes even the dudes in the basement, I was like, I do not have a hard time believing that there are a bunch of guys in the world who would be like, hey, I'm hearing screaming from the basement of my apartment. Oh, guy down here with the cameras filming a movie? All right, have fun, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, right.
The other moment that I noticed this time is in the beginning when Sonia is doing the acting exercise with him, and she's fully like she's done with his bullshit. She's like, get away from me. I want to get away from you. There are two women that walk by and look back a couple of times and turn the corner.
Yep.
And this made me think of shit like Kitty Genovese being raped and murdered in back in the 60s in New York, and 38 people just watched it happen without calling the police.
Yep.
And there's this like social laziness, this like social pressure to not get involved with shit.
Like I don't want to whatever's going on, I don't want to
be a part of it.
Right.
Because it's very likely that when Adrian and Sonia were actually filming this scene, these were just two random passersby that saw them doing this and just didn't want to be part of it.
Yep. They were just like, hey, like, don't really love how that man is screaming at that woman. Anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yeah.
It's not just, I mean, it is definitely about men and misogyny and toxic masculinity being a big old boys club. But it is also, I think, about just in general, just the social problem of being a bystander and ignoring these things in our society that we see them.
Obvious signs.
Yeah.
There's even like a thing so I think Sonia gets dropped off, I think by her parents, to meet Adrian. She gets dropped off in a car with like an older couple, and they like interact with Adrian, and he's like very like pleasant and personable with them, and they ask like zero follow-up questions. And like you said, this was actually the first time that this actress met Adrian in real life. Right? So presumably these were probably her actual parents or whatever.
Yeah, her actual parents pulling up and dropping her off.
Right. And they just like straight up don't. They're just like, oh, you're Adrian? Nice to meet you. And like the dad shakes his hand and like that's it. Right? And I was just like, that's wild that you captured that on film. Being like, oh, hello, strange man. We brought our daughter here. Here's her bag. Have fun shooting your movie. And it's just like, man, like, and then there's the thing that I think is probably not fake improv. It's probably just a thing that actually happened that the actress decided to say on camera, which is when Flory gets dropped off on the bus. She's like, the bus driver was telling me like I shouldn't do this, right? And he was saying that like to watch out for you. And then it's Alexandra, not Flory, because then they're walking and Alexandra says, yeah, like I told him what I was doing, and he said that I shouldn't do this movie because he thought it was like some other kind of movie, right? Because we're filming in Verrett, Romania, and nobody makes movies here. So clearly, like, this is like some kind of fucking sexual exploitation film, right? It's like a porno. And so it's just so interesting that, like, you do get like real people who didn't know that there was a movie going on. You get their actual interactions with the world of the movie as like part of it. And yeah, like, to your point, it like skews on the side of like apathy, right? Because this bus driver is like, hey, maybe you shouldn't do this, but that's all he does.
Yeah.
You know? He doesn't like come out and talk to Adrian or anything. He's just like, hey, watch out, little girl. Bye.
Yeah. And I mean, it's something that I've noticed in myself that I'm occasionally guilty of. I live in a slightly poorer section of town, and there are times where it's been 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night, I hear someone just yelling in the middle of the street, just full on having a couple just full on having a fight in the middle of the street, and I just shut my door and ignore it. Yeah. And it's it's only in these very brief scenes throughout the movie, kind of a blink and you miss him kind of thing. But when you think about how this movie was filmed, it was something that I really stuck out with me this time around.
Yeah.
And just the police stuff is so. Thinking about how that police scene actually went down is really interesting to me. I don't actually know how it did, but again, like knowing that she called the police and that there were Adrian and presumably her at some point after they shut the camera off were able to actually convince the cops to leave. I don't know. It's just very interesting. Sorry, I'll stop talking. I feel like I'm
that was all very coherent.
I feel like I'm being possessed again. but I'm awake this time.
The thing with the cops, right? Also in the movie happens immediately before he chloroforms her, basically.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, it's that. And then he's like, okay, we only have to shoot one more thing and it's a night scene. And then like he chloroforms her and puts her in a catsuit and fucking strangles her to death. Right? And it's so pointed, I think, the placement of that footage in the movie. Like the editing in this movie, I think it is helpful in conveying all of the themes that we've been talking about. Because with 25 hours of footage, I feel like it feels like this is very intentionally cut together. And the cop thing happening like right before the chloroform thing, I'm just like, yeah, he knows what he's saying, and he wants us to be taking what we're taking away from it. Also that chloroform scene, by the way, I just wanted to, this isn't related to the themes at all. It's just,
we can call out stuff that resonates with us as we go.
I think that's probably at the point in the conversation that we're at.
I don't know if I have a ton more thematically to
talk
about.
I think we covered the thematic territory, so we can probably like wrap it up with just like final shit that we wanted to like dwell on.
Chloroform scene is so disturbing.
So the thing that makes this work so well, right, is that every single thing that you have seen up until this point of the movie, the chloroform scene is the first time something in the movie isn't real. Everything else has been real, right? Because all the rest of it has been literally just, here's my actual house, here's my actual mom, here's this actual actress who's in this movie that is the title of the movie that you're watching, that I am actually meeting for the first time. Like, it's all real. And yes, the actress was like briefed on like the beats of the scene that, like, you know, the real actress Sonia wasn't as thrown off by character Adrian as the character Sonia is, presumably, but it's still, everything is real. And even the flames coming out of the chimney that I called out earlier, that happens before the chloroform scene, and you're just like, yeah, that's just a real thing that he's just filming and reacting to. So none of it has been faked. And then he has the bottle, and he's like telling her, like, this is, oh, don't worry, it's just water, right?
So it's water, but it smells like chloroform.
If it smells a little bit like formal, like chloroform, I put some sanitary alcohol inside.
Okay.
Yeah. And
press X to doubt.
And you as the viewer are just like, oh my God, like, holy shit. Because, and he does it the first time without any of the chloroform on the cloth and lifts her up and is like, oh, hey, great. We figured that out. We figured out the choreography here. I have to pick you up. That's how I do this. Right. And she's like, oh, okay, great. And then he's like, okay, just one more take. And then he puts the chloroform on the cloth and it addresses the camera. And he's like, and the actress, I'm going to surprise her. She will come around the corner and then you will see what happens. Right. And you as the viewer are just like, I cannot fucking believe I'm watching this right now.
I don't want to see what happens.
Like God. Yeah.
And then when he, okay, one other thing about this scene.
Yeah.
This is the first time that we've really gotten a sense of what Adrian looks like physically.
Yeah.
And Adrian Tofei, if you're listening to this, I do not want to insult your physical appearance at all. This is just as the film, as you have depicted yourself in the film, Adrian Tofei is fucking super tall.
He's huge. He's not like beefed up huge, but he is just a very tall, imposing presence. And he's like a lurch type.
Yeah, that's when you realize how tall this guy actually is.
Yep.
And because part of the scene is he's in profile talking to her. He has like a big head, kind of. So he just looks proportionally wrong in some way. Again, Adrian, I don't want to insult you.
Yeah.
This
You have a very good face and body for acting.
Yes.
Which I believe you know because you used it to great effect in your own film.
Yes.
Yes.
So him picking this actress up and her thrashing around in an unbroken shot, an unbroken take.
So long.
She thrashes around for a while
and then
goes limp and he's still holding on to her and he has to like drag her away.
She lays limp while he's chloroforming her again to get her arms down and then talking to the camera. She lays limp for like several minutes and it feels too real.
Yeah.
It's the thing that found footage horror tries to do and often fails at, which is like, even though I know this movie is pretend, I almost can't believe it's pretend because of how real what I'm watching feels.
And it taps into something that I've seen some women express, is that, like, no matter how nice a man may appear to be, in some cases, men are still physically stronger than women and could very easily brutalize them if they wanted to. And that is a fear that I've seen women express
it's
before.
The fear of like even if he seems like nice and self-effacing and whatever, it's like, he's still fucking 6'4" or whatever the hell.
Yeah.
Like he's still a huge man. The chloroform scene it goes on so long. It's so upsetting. The scene after it where he undresses her is so upsetting.
Mm-hmm.
You don't actually see him undress her, which is almost worse.
The scariest line in this movie, and I think I pointed this out to you the first time I watched it.
Yeah.
He, after she's in the cat suit, and he's filming and talking to the camera and stuff, it cuts immediately to the next morning, and he says, "I didn't sleep. I was up all night working." What does that mean, Adrian?
Yes.
What were you doing?
And key to the disturbing nature of that line is he says that and turns over in bed, and he's laying in bed under the covers next to a woman whose clothes he has taken off and changed into other clothes and bound with ropes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the movie just doesn't address it.
Mm-hmm.
The movie's basically like, just take away from that whatever you want.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to comment on about Adrian Tofei's physical appearance, and in the scene with Alexandra at the end when he comes back in and she's got control of the camera now, and he ducks under the doorway.
He comes through that doorway like he is fucking goddamn Nosferatu.
He looks like Nosferatu.
Yes.
Exactly. He is just, the lighting isn't very good, so he's kind of in the shadows, and just this giant Romanian man
it's so
standing
scary.
in a doorway holding a knife.
It's such a scary
It's so
visual.
good.
Yeah.
And
immediately, like, Alexandra is the one holding the camera, and immediately it puts you, the viewer, just fully into her head, where it's like, oh, this guy is huge, and he has a knife, and I'm fucked. And the only way I can get out of this is be as nice to him as I can possibly be, as convincingly as I possibly can, right? Yeah. The other, we sort of talked about how we liked the Flory scene because it's a very effective, disturbing horror scene. The one where she's all cut up, right? The thing that I did want to call out that we didn't talk about yet is her performance in this scene is so good. She keeps screaming "fuck you" at him, and it's like last night especially, I was just like, I think I've had a different favorite of the three actresses every time I've watched this movie because I've seen it 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
I think the first time my favorite was Alexandra because it's easy for her to be your favorite. She has the big long scene at the end. She also sings really well. We get a nice little scene of her displaying her singing talent, which I like. The second time, I think my favorite was Sonia because the whole like I'm an actor who's very bad at improv and her getting very frustrated with this impossible improv exercise really spoke to me. The second time I watched it. I think the third time, this time, I was like, I'm pretty sure Flory's my favorite because she kind of sees through his bullshit right away and is basically like, okay, you're some kind of fucking pervert. Right? And then she's like, okay, like I'll do your fucking movie. I'm just going to be kind of here with my like sardonic smile on my face. Kind of. And when he's like teasing her about not liking Anne Hathaway's movie, she's just like, okay, yeah, fucking, I've been hearing this for days. Right. But then like in the scene where he's like actively killing her, instead of it being like a sad, like slasher, the cheerleader getting knifed and she's just like, oh no, stop, right? The scene is again so long. We hold on this take for so long, and the main thing that she's doing is screaming fuck you at him. She does it like a bunch of times, and I was just like, I don't know, weirdly, as it would be a stretch of the imagination to call this scene empowering in any way, it weirdly sort of feels the closest it can get to that because she's just so defiant the entire time. She's not saying, please stop. She's not saying, she's not crying for help. It's all about him. And she's just being like, fuck you, right? You, the man doing this to me, go fucking die. Mm-hmm. Right. And I don't know. There was just something that really struck me about that this time. Yeah. And her performance while she's doing it is great. She delivers the hell out of fuck you.
Yeah, they're all great. Yeah. And they're all having to like maintain a performance through a lot of long takes and a lot of repetitious sequences. I think Sonia stood out to me for that reason because that scene, the acting exercise scene, does such a good job of setting the tone of this movie. Yeah. Where it just goes on and on and on and on as they keep trying to do this thing. Yeah. Where she can't let him get close to her, but she can't run away. Yeah. Which it just immediately sets you on edge when you watch it. And her having to maintain that performance again, presumably like just after being dropped off by her parents and meeting the actual Adrian Tofei for the first time, and keeping it up over all of these takes for such a long sequence. I think she did a really good job.
Yeah. Yeah.
So she stood out to me this time. Alexandra stood out to me the first time, like you said. Yeah. Because she gets to be the final girl. She gets to be Laurie Strode, Yeah.
But instead of fighting her way out of it, she talks her way out. She acts her way out of it. Yeah. She just improvs her way to freedom. I do really like, that's kind of the other main scene that we haven't like really discussed in depth that I want to talk about, is just the improv scene between the two of them in the basement.
It's so tense and it's so good, and it's one of the sequences in this movie that has the least amount of cuts.
Yeah. There's just lots of long takes where one of them is holding the camera on the other one, right? Because initially Alexandra has the camera, and then he makes her give it to him. He puts it on a tripod at one point, and then he's holding it. And yeah, it's just the ones that the moments of that scene that really stuck out to me this time is when he is holding the knife and the camera, and so it's just his hand and the knife in front of the lens, and then her in the corner of the basement, and it's like Adrian Tofei is putting you, the viewer, in the position of like menacing Alexandra, because it's like your POV is his, and it's like those were some of the shots that made me the most uncomfortable, because it was like that's when he's saying shit like if you try to run, I'm gonna cut your throat, I'm gonna kill you, right? And the perspective when he's saying that is like, you're him. And that's when she says a couple of my favorite lines in this entire movie, which is the first thing that she said that really stuck out to me is, I don't know how to get out of here without getting hurt. Which I was just like, that's like it's clearly just improv dialogue and not scripted. It's such a pure distillation of how she's feeling in that moment that I was like, that is like genius stuff to come out of this actress's mouth in this moment, because she's just being honest with him. She's basically like, I don't know what you want me to do. You have all the power in this situation, and I don't know how I can convince you not to kill me. And that line should be obvious why that line resonated with me based on all the other thematic stuff that we just talked about. But I just love the way she says it. I love the honesty there. And she's just like, the only thing I want to do is not die. And I don't know how to do that. So we're like at an impasse, right? And that's eventually what leads her into like, maybe I'll just yes and everything you say.
Yeah.
yes, you do love Anne. And I bet she loves you back.
Just
right?
Gonna throw this one out here. I also like so that those POV shots of him holding this shitty little steak knife.
Yeah.
And he's threatening to stab her. We haven't talked about this yet. Maybe we'll talk about it a little bit more and then wrap this movie up.
Yeah.
This movie's funny as hell.
Yes.
So when he's doing like, if you move, I'll stab you, and then he's doing like psycho.
And then she like starts saying something else, and he just does the noise again.
And it's funny.
Yeah.
This part of the movie though, it's also like kind of bone chilling.
Oh yeah.
Like there's stuff that I laughed at in this movie. I very uncomfortably laughed at that psycho bit.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like in Scream, where it's like he's seen too many movies.
Yeah. Yes. And this movie is full to me of those uncomfortable laughs. Like you're like, okay, like that's funny. I don't feel like it's okay for me to find it as funny as I do. And I think that that's sort of like what the movie wants from you.
Yeah.
Is that reaction. There's a moment where he's about to strangle Sonia, and I think he has the knife out there too. I think he might be threatening her with the knife. I don't remember, but he's like threatening Sonia basically. And he's yelling at her like, "Oh, you can scream as much as you want. I told everyone that we're filming a movie." And she's like trying to like roll off the bed, and at one point he goes, "Just be calm." And that got a huge laugh out of me this time, because I was like, that is an insane thing to say to someone who you've tied up and gagged and are about to murder, is just be calm. And
I like when he's chloroforming her to strangle her.
Mm-hmm.
And then he realizes that he didn't use enough, so he puts a little bit more.
Yes.
That's also very funny to me.
The other one right after he strangles Sonia is so funny too, because he looks at her and he goes, "Oh my God, she is so dead." Because he's saying some other shit, and then he like stops dead in his tracks and looks at her and is like, "Oh my God, she is so dead."
And of course, he says "okay" so many times in this movie, and
Okay.
he goes, "Okay,
Oh my God.
okay." It is fucking so funny.
Yes. And also like sort of like nails on a chalkboard too. Like it's funny, but also he does it so much, and he's so icky that you're like, fucking stop doing that.
Well, that's part of what makes this film feel so realistic. Is
Yeah.
it feels so improvised, and it feels like a nervous habit.
Yeah.
Like saying or
Yeah.
anything
Or
like
right.
that. Or right in your case, yes.
His laugh is very upsetting to me too. Yeah. Yes.
That's why he should be the Joker, because he's got an insane laugh.
Just anytime he laughs in this movie, I'm like, I really want him to not do that anymore.
Or the fucking dance that he does. And he's just like wagging his arms around.
There's the while we're talking about moments in this movie that are funny, but you feel like are not allowed to be funny,
Mhm.
while he's killing Flory, he's like done some of the cuts, and then he like stops for a little bit. So apologies that was just an awkward cut just now, but we had like a literal ghost in the machine. I think a demon is in the computer. And Audition, the program that we record in, stopped working when I was like mid-sentence. This is real, by the way. Like, sorry, all of the demon shit has been real, but like this is like even more real. This is the most real out of all the demon shit, which is all, to be clear, real and actually happening to us, and is not some kind of elaborate bit that we've constructed for the podcast. David did levitate and bark like a dog, but also, in addition to that, even more really than that, the computer just crashed, probably due to similar demonic activity. So, anyway, the shot in the basement when he's killing Flory, where he dances to the little song, it's the doorway, and there's like a sliver of light where you can see the back wall of the basement, and then it's the white sheet, and like all you can see of Flory and the bed is like her from like her shoulders to her head. Like that's all you can see. And she's like laying there kind of like whimpering and screaming still, because she's not unconscious, but she's been cut already. And he starts playing the song, and you don't see any of him at first. You just hear the song that he's already done his little dance to once in the movie, and it's like the and his arms just extend into the little sliver of light that you can see in the basement, holding the laptop and just dancing with the laptop back and forth. And then he emerged, like his head and shoulders emerge, and he's just smiling so big and being like and it's like simultaneously like very horrifying and upsetting, and like also I was laughing my ass off because it's very funny in like the worst way. It like makes you be like, oh, I am no better than a beast because I am laughing at this.
It's so
like,
absurd that like the only reaction I can think of is to laugh at it.
Right. Exactly. Because it's just like this movie does such a good job of like tormenting your brain with like stuff that is extremely like cringe-inducing and very awkward and very uncomfortable and icky and gross. The mouth sounds that he makes are part of that.
Oh man.
He just like, he's always like smacking his lips and like, yeah. And the camera's always really close to his mouth. Sometimes you can sort of like see up his nose. Like all of that shit is part of it. So this movie does such a good job of just making taking your brain to the breaking point. That like in the Flory scene, yeah, it's like there is nothing else I can do but laugh at this because this movie has like frayed me down to like a thin wire of sanity, right? And I'm just like, okay, fine, fuck it. We're dancing to this Romanian revolutionary song now, I guess. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny movie.
Funny movie. People are dying.
Okay.
Which is so fucking funny.
It's so funny. It is so funny the way he says it. It's just, and that's in the singing scene with Alexandra. Like she does like her like amazing little like R&B vocals.
Yeah, and then the ambulance drives by.
It just goes, people are dying. Okay. And also like weirdly that joke is the thematic thing in the movie that you talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, yeah, you see somebody, you hear two of your neighbors screaming at the top of their lungs at each other, right? And it's like, you know, I'm not going to get involved.
It's indifference and apathy.
Yep. Yeah, people are dying. Okay.
Right.
Right? Well, I can't do anything about it, so I'm just going to like keep to myself and not worry about it. So while it is funny, it is also extremely dark, which is the whole ethos of this movie.
Yeah.
Like that's its whole thing.
I feel like we've talked about this movie more than anyone else has on this earth.
Potentially. Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to you want to leave us off with before we wrap it up?
No, I think I covered all of my thoughts more or less. I don't think that there's anything I had planned to bring up. No. Yeah. I think, well, actually, the one thing is that I like how he says strawberry syrup.
Yes. Strawberry syrup.
She thinks we are going to use fake blood with this mixture of syrup, strawberry syrup, and red paint. I get a kick out of the way he says syrup.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we've talked about this movie. I mean, short of having Adrian himself on the podcast, I think we've covered. Which, if you're listening, Adrian,
reach out to us.
And you're interested, we would love to have you. I can think of like nothing more than I would like to sit down and talk with you about a movie. So.
Absolutely. We'll even we would love to do if an interview with you about your upcoming films, anything you want to talk about. Anyway.
Yeah. Justus.
Shaky
Cam Summer Camp 2024, the third film that we have talked about for this series of episodes. Be My Cat, a film for Anne. Is it the greatest movie ever made?
David, I'm going to keep this one short and sweet because I've shared pretty much all my thoughts on this movie. Yes, it is the greatest movie ever made. It is one of my favorite found footage movies. This is currently number 2 behind next week's title. On my found footage horror ranking list, and it is also one of my favorite evil films, which is another type of movie that I love. This movie has rancid vibes, and I'm here for it, and I think it's immaculately well made and well acted, and it's the greatest movie ever made.
Are there degrees of evil films? Like, is there movies that you think are more evil or less evil than this?
Yes, I would say currently my Letterboxd list isn't organized from like least to most evil or most to least evil. Maybe I should do it that way. I would put Be My Cat, a film for Anne sort of in the middle of the evil spectrum, where it's like, oh, this movie is evil enough to be considered an evil film, being like a 1, to the most evil film ever made. It would be like a 10, right? So like you cross the threshold from normal film into evil film at 1, but then there's like a whole ascent of evil that you are capable of, right? I would put this one around like a 5 alongside like the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I think it's about as evil as Texas Chainsaw 1974. There are more evil films than this on that list. For example, Speak No Evil, I think more evil film than Be My Cat, a film for Anne. Speak No Evil is a movie that is relentlessly awkward and cringe-inducing like this movie, but it is never funny, and then the worst thing you can possibly imagine happens at the end of it.
Why are we remaking that? I haven't even seen the original, but why are we doing that?
I have no idea. The original is perfect. It shouldn't be remade. If you can't read subtitles, you don't deserve to engage with the ideas in that film.
Okay.
But yeah, so I would say that there are movies more evil than this one. Speak No Evil being an example. I also think that the Podmaster just asked me if anything is a 10 out of 10 evil. I don't think I've encountered something that I would put as a 10 out of 10 evil. I think that all the movies I've seen could have gone more evil. So I'm constantly looking for that 10 out of 10 evil film. I think Speak No Evil is like a 9 though. It's quite, and it's not even that movie is that graphic or grotesque. It's just, it is relentlessly awkward and uncomfortable and bleak, and then has an ending that is just pure pessimistic, right? It's basically like, and evil triumphs, and everyone who attempted to do anything good or right in this story has met the worst fate that you can possibly imagine befalling a human being. The end.
I need to see that.
Yeah, it's great. It's great.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yes, it's the greatest movie ever made. David, is Be My Cat, a film for Anne, the greatest movie ever made?
Yeah, I mean, like, what the fuck, dude?
Yeah.
This movie is such a wonderful, like, mess of contradictions.
Mm-hmm.
It is disturbing. and viscerally upsetting and feels dangerous. It feels like something that you shouldn't be watching. And yet it is so, again, like well crafted and choreographed and controlled and restrained, and also fun and funny, and also makes you feel like shit. And I think the performances across the board in this thing are incredible. I really can't stress enough how good all of these performances are, but especially Adrian Tofei. Like this 90-minute character study of this insane, deeply troubled character that he has created is such a compelling thing to watch. And so many moments of this movie where he is just monologuing to the camera. I can't take my eyes off of it. It's such compelling stuff.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's so cheap and such it's not very well known. I want to like champion it.
Yeah.
And it has so much, I think, to say again about the experience of women in the world and in the entertainment industry. It has so much to say about society's treatment of violence and women, and just what it means to be an artist, what it means to create, and the fact that it can contain all of these seemingly disparate ideas and emotions and experiences in a 90-minute movie that was shot for basically nothing.
A 90-minute found footage horror experimental acting exercise contains all that stuff you just said, which is like, that's insane.
Yeah. I kind of think it's brilliant, and it's quite close to being a masterpiece for me. So yeah, Be My Cat, a Film for Anne is the greatest movie ever made.
Yeah, hell yeah. I expected that you were going to say that, but I'm just so delighted that you reacted to this movie the same way that I did when I showed it to you, where like you got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a movie that I have not stopped thinking about since you showed it to me. Yeah. And that's a very good sign.
Yeah.
When I watch a movie and I can't stop thinking about it. So like, yeah, man, this if for some reason you got to the end of this without watching the movie, first of all, shame on you. Yeah. Second of all, go watch it right now.
Yeah, if you think you can handle it after hearing us talk about it and you didn't watch it beforehand, go ahead and watch it. You'll be fine, I promise. Unless it's going to be triggering for you, and then, please protect your brain.
And if it does end up being triggering for you and you watch it anyway, just don't get mad at us.
Yeah.
We're just goofy little guys.
We're just little guys.
We're just goofballs recommending movies.
We're just a couple of guys in a haunted room recording a podcast. So next week, David, Shaky Cam Summer Camp, my theme month, will conclude.
The most obvious way it could possibly conclude.
That's true, but I figured Go Big or Go Home, partially because when we cover big name titles, they tend to perform better.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And we are trying to grow our listenership. So I was like, well, we could talk about Wreck, which is a well-known one. But I was like, or we could just talk about the Blair Witch
Let's
Project.
just fucking talk about Blair Witch.
So that's what we're talking about next week. We are talking about the Blair Witch Project, the biggest name in the found footage horror genre, pretty much bar none.
Yeah.
So I'll be delighted to have that conversation with you. It's one of my favorite films. And it's tippy top at the top of my found footage horror ranking, as I think any sane person would probably put it. Although I don't know, after this watch of Be My Cat, a Film for Anne, I'm like, I could kind of see that taking the top spot. Like, I feel like 1 and 2 are kind of interchangeable for me. But Blair Witch still holds the title for now. So that's what we'll be talking about next week.
Yeah, I'm excited to revisit it. I watched it recently with you and the Podmaster. So it'll be nice to actually just like sit in my house in the dark and watch it the way it was intended to be.
It's the best way to do it. If you're going to watch Blair Witch, you got to watch it, especially now that like everybody's seen it and we all know about it and we all know the final shot and everything. The way to make that movie still work is make sure your house is pitch black and dead silent while you watch it. And I defy you to not still get scared, even if you've seen the movie before. Yeah. Anyway.
So we hope that you'll tune in for that. Unless something happens to us between now and then.
Yeah, I don't know. I go see. I feel like maybe the order of operations is like doctor first, exorcist second, in terms of how I'm gonna see look into what's been going on with me on this episode. I feel like maybe like you should kind of pursue similar options. Although I know that your healthcare plan through your employer is not as good as mine. I have like a really good healthcare plan, so like you might be able to get in to see an exorcist sooner than a doctor.
Maybe I need to like rewatch The Phantom Menace or something.
Yeah.
Just like
that
something about maybe that'll appease George.
It does seem like
Wano.
George Lucas, and we were speculating on our last episode that George Lucas was somehow involved in this. I don't know. I think you just have to go on your own prequel quest here and try and figure out.
I don't know if I can watch Jar Jar Binks step in poopy again.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I still haven't opened up the wall to see if he's dead in there, but I haven't heard anything for a while, except for when we're recording the podcast. Weirdly, it seems like this demonic activity, by the way, is honed in on the podcast, because I worked from home in this office all day today. I didn't hear shit until we fired up the microphones. I also think I was listening to some of the recordings backwards, and it does sound like at certain points that backwards ghost voice, when I reverse the audio, is saying the name of our show. It sounded like a couple times it's saying greatest movie ever made. So it seems like the demon is somehow connected to the podcast, the history of the podcast. I really don't know what it could be, though. But I guess hopefully we'll find out more next week.
Yeah.
And
in the meantime, tell your friends about the show and continue to spread the word. We love you so much.
Yes, we do.
And as always,
later,
deep shits. Okay.
As these recordings became increasingly strange, I found myself wondering if this disappearance had a rational explanation at all, or if I had stumbled into the world of the paranormal. The final recording of Shaky Cam Summer Camp would confirm these suspicions, and change my life forever. Hear what I heard next time on The Greatest Footage Ever Found.